Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it is an honor for me as the president of the Universal Periodic Review Working Group to officially welcome you to this year's sessions of the Universal Periodic Review. This cycle of the UPR provides us with a renewed opportunity to take stock of the developments that have occurred since the last periodic reviews. This mechanism of the UN, as you all know, is a unique process which is centered on a cooperative review of UN member states. The ultimate aim of this mechanism is to improve the human rights situation in all countries and to address human rights violations wherever they occur. 6 states will be reviewed today: Argentina, India, and Morocco during the morning session, Pakistan, South Africa, and the United Kingdom in the afternoon. All states under review will have the opportunity to engage in interactive dialogue with the recommending states. Each review will take 30 minutes in total. Therefore, we kindly ask all delegates to adhere to the speaking time shown on the time on Zoom. Furthermore, I remind the delegates to only take the floor when instructed to do so. I kindly request all the delegates to turn off their phones and to turn on their cameras. Furthermore, please change your name to state name if you haven't done so. In case of a weak internet connection and after communicating the issue to the Secretariat, you are allowed to turn your cameras off. If a participant faces audio or video issues which persist for more than minutes, we will give the floor to another representative of the state. If technical issues persist, we kindly request the participant to call us by the Zoom phone number, which has been provided to you beforehand. For technical support, the participants may send a private message to the Secretariat in the chat. The working group session is also live streamed on YouTube. You can find the link on Moodle or on our website. Feel free to share it with your institute, colleagues, and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, we will now proceed with the review of Argentina. I now have the honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Janina Rüther, Secretary of Human Rights and Cultural Pluralism of the nation of Argentina. Your Excellency, you have a maximum of 15 minutes to present your national report. You have the floor now.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished fellow delegates, Honorable Chair. My name is Janina Rüther, Secretary of Human Rights and Cultural Pluralism of the nation of Argentina. Expressing its utmost concern to the current situation we are all situated in, the Argentine Republic stresses the effects of the global pandemic first. Keeping its major impact in mind, we all face enormous challenges in terms of inclusion, wealth, and climate. In addressing these issues, we have as a central objective to recall the promotion of the right to individual and collective development of citizenship. Acknowledging that the state must promote and facilitate the conditions that allow the full implementation of the rights defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, the importance of constant progress towards welfare is recognized. Underlining that the Argentine Republic is a facilitator and not an obstacle to the development, the conviction that solid institutional foundations with full respect for the rule of law and human rights are essential elements to achieve this. Following the ideas lined out in the national report, the most relevant issues in terms of current achievements and future challenges in the area of economic, social, and cultural rights will be presented. As stated before, the COVID-19 pandemic is an extra challenge to all of us. Therefore, additional assistance to vulnerable families of 15,000 pesos was provided. Having devoted attention to specific challenges in line with the pandemic, one of the major topics during the last years is the combat of discrimination. In 2022, a 3-year national plan against discrimination becomes effective to target the Argentine society to protect the rights of groups that have been systematically disadvantaged. Furthermore, the National Institute Against Discrimination, Xenophobia and Racism, which aim is to promote and implement federal policies to achieve a diverse and egalitarian society, created the Commission for the Historical Recognition of the Afro-Argentine Community. In 2019, In response to the need of pursuing and promoting women's rights and the diversity of gender identities and sexual orientation, the Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity was created, underlining the extension of 10% to the minimum quota of 30% of women on the electoral list for national legislative positions in 2020. The ministry aims at further achievements. Additionally, 2017 to 2019 National Action Plan for the Prevention, Assistance and Eradication of Violence Against Women found that substantial progress in prevention and comprehensive care, as well as training, institutional strengthening, monitoring and evaluation was made. Furthermore, the free help hotline 144, created in 2013, is used by over 90% of women who experience domestic violence. Argentina passed the Micaela Law in 2019, which focuses on adapting mandatory gender training for all persons in executive, legislative, and judicial positions to promote gender perspectives and raise awareness in the face of gender equality. In 2020, the Ministry of Women, Gender and Diversity adopted a new national action plan against gender-based violence from 2020 to 2022. Thereby, the Argentine Republic recognizes the need to counter gender inequalities, injustices, and prevailing machismo. In 2019, the rescue program of the National Secretariat for Childhood, Adolescence, and Family reported assigning 1,438 victims. The database records victims' biographical information and their use of applicable services. The prevention of child labor is tackled by the international technical collaboration Offsite, Drawing the Line, by governments, development agencies, and NGOs. It is financed by the US Labor Department from 2019 to 2023 and seeks to end child labor in the Argentine farming sector. With the program Acompañar Puentes de Igualdad, the Federación Education Council combined efforts of the government and civil society for the education of children, teenagers, and young adults. Additionally, the fund Volver a la Escuela of 5,000 million pesos for students whose education got interrupted and abandoned during the pandemic was created. Noting further that national authorities of Argentina have cooperated with the International Organization for Migration during the COVID-19 pandemic to respond to issues and needs of migrants and their families, distribution of food and hygiene kits at entry points of the country took place. In regard to human trafficking, Argentina meets the requirements and expanded the trafficking investigations database Cistrata in federal crimination information system for the crime of trafficking in persons was expanded by input from 92% of the provincial governments. Furthermore, the delegation of the Argentine Republic would like to highlight the establishment of the National Committee to Prevent Torture in 2018. Alongside with the committee, the Association of the Prevention of Torture undertakes activities such as the mechanism for monitoring detention centers, such as prisons, police station lockups, and security forces facilitators. Expressing its grave concern and thereby its utter readiness to combat climate change, the Argentine Republic passes laws such as Law 27520 on the minimum budget for adaptation and mitigation of global climate change, and commits to agreements such as the Escazú Agreement, which includes granting access to environmental information and public participation in decision-making to the society. This agreement, which entered into force in 2021, additionally contains the access to information, public participation, and access to justice in environmental matters in Latin America and the Caribbean. Moreover, the modification of Act number 27.078 by the development of information and communication technologies, telecommunications, and their associated resources, including establishing and guaranteeing complete neutrality of networks with the pursuit of enabling access to the inhabitants of the Argentine Republic to information and communication services. The aim of enabling a price-free, on mobile data, fixed line internet connection, and television services through the end of 2020 by declaring these services as essential and strategic public services to protect citizens' access to information, freedom of expression, and children's access to education during the pandemic was reached. In response to the United Kingdom's question regarding the ongoing deforestation and its impact on the indigenous population, the membership of the Argentine Republic in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People introduces domestic legislation to guarantee rights. Additionally, subsections 17 and 22 of Article 75 of the Argentine Constitution recognize indigenous communal ownership of traditional land and guarantee indigenous involvement in decisions regarding natural resources in their lands. Lastly, highlighting the outcomes of the COP26, the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference, we all are called upon the urgency of climate ambition and the need to think of innovative mechanisms to rebuild ourselves better. We need environmental and social justice. This is what the development of our region has to aim for. The lessons learned from the pandemic must be applied to climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we will start the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each reviewing state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for your remarks to be included in the working report. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order. I start by giving the floor to the Delegation of India. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, Mrs. President. The nation of India welcomes the delegation of Argentina and thanks for the presentation of its national report. India is concerned by the unequal accessibility to health and all children and peoples of Argentina. The nation of India would like to ask Argentina what measures will be taken to ensure education to all indigenous people, indigenous children, regardless of their socioeconomic status. India recommends to Argentina to take all necessary measures to avoid any dangerous living conditions that could be harmful to the child's health, as well as to implement all required measures to provide all indigenous students with adequate education, including programs aimed to preserving and transmitting the cultural heritage of the Mapuche community. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the Delegation of Morocco. Your Excellency, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. The Kingdom of Morocco welcomes the delegation of Argentina and thanks it for the presentation of its fourth national report. The Kingdom of Morocco congratulates Argentina on its efforts to combat human trafficking and to address domestic violence. The delegation commends the Republic for establishing an NHRI and the Ombudsman position. However, the Kingdom of Morocco is concerned that the Ombudsman position has not been filled recently. As such, Morocco recommends Argentina to appoint an Ombudsman promptly in order to make full use of the established institutions. Morocco also recommends to continue with the implementation of the Ingreso Familiar de Emergencia in order to alleviate the circumstances caused by the pandemic and encourage families to allow their children to go back to school. Lastly, the Kingdom of Morocco recommends the Republic of Argentina to act in full compliance with the Convention Against Torture. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the Delegation of Pakistan. Your Excellency, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We wish the distinguished delegation of Argentina welcome, and we thank them for the comprehensive report presented. Pakistan appreciates the Argentinian healthcare system. Unfortunately, the public system is slow, and this forces a large number of Argentinians to choose the private sector and pay for their medical treatments. Pakistan therefore recommends to implement policies aimed at making the healthcare sector quicker to be able to treat all citizens in the public sector in a reasonable time. Pakistan is very concerned about the rise of the number of people and children living in poverty and invites the Argentinian government to take measures for tackling this alarming issue, especially concerning access to food and water. In addition, we would like to recommend to Argentina to take the necessary measures to ensure access to education for every child and promote more homogeneous school programs throughout the country and develop a national plan to ensure that all children come back to school after the pandemic, with a special regard to children belonging to a minority group. We wish Argentina a very successful review for this cycle. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of Argentina may now comment. Your Excellency, Mrs. Janine Rüther, if you want to answer to the previous speakers or add any comments, you have the floor, and your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, distinguished fellow delegates. First of all, thank you all for your contributing to the review progress of the Argentine Republic and the recommendations, questions, and remarks that were received. Seeing that the focus of the Argentine Republic in this year's UPR cycle is inter alia, children and indigenous people, and especially the education during the pandemic, we see that children were enabled also during the pandemic to continue their education. Also, the healthcare sector is of utmost importance for our delegation, as we see that the pandemic influenced all of us. The delegation is pleased to recognize that further steps in these fields are approached. The Argentine Republic is also pleased to have received questions posed by the distinguished delegations. Therefore, we want to highlight that there is also a plan for children to bring them back to school in the pandemic. That will be taking place during the next month and years, hopefully after the pandemic might end someday. Thank you also for those insights, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now continue with the list of speakers. The delegation of South Africa, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. South Africa welcomes the delegation of Argentina and the comprehensive presentation of its national report. South Africa is encouraged by Argentina's progress since the last review, especially the Micaela Law in 2019, which adopts mandatory gender training for all persons in the executive, legislative, and judicial power of the nation. Furthermore, South Africa commends the update of the National Plan Against Discrimination. South Africa recommends the following. Firstly, to implement stronger enforcement and monitoring mechanism to ban deforestation, as it had dreadful environmental and human rights consequences. Secondly, to address and continue its combat towards hate speech. Thirdly, to continue providing early medical abortion through telemedical services and to ensure access to abortion services under any circumstances. We wish Argentina a very successful review during this session. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now I give the floor to the delegation of the United Kingdom. Your Excellency, Ms. Comoretto, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland welcomes the delegation of the Republic of Argentina and thanks it for the presentation of its comprehensive national report. The United Kingdom congratulates Argentina on the progress made in protecting women's reproductive health following the creation of Law 27/610 on access to the voluntary interruption of pregnancy, in line with the recommendations made in the previous cycle. Furthermore, since Argentina is a signatory state of the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous People and the ILO Convention 169, we believe in its responsibility to protect the rights of indigenous people. With this in mind, we would like to express our concerns. First, Regarding the implementation of the Law 27 and 610, the UK recommends Argentina to ensure equal accessibility to abortion in all regions, eliminating the negative effects of the decentralized health system and monitoring the implementation of the legislation. Second, regarding the high rate of deforestation that occurred in 2020, which affects climate change and has serious effects on the indigenous population, we recommend that Argentina adopt enforcement and control mechanisms to totally prohibit deforestation. Thank you very much.
Dear delegates, we are currently facing some technical issues, and I'd like to ask you for 1 second of patience. Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. To the delegation of Argentina, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks. Your Excellency, Mrs. Rüther, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you all the delegations for your comments and recommendations. Firstly, I want to comment on the updates of the National Plan Against Discrimination. And here, the delegation of Argentina wants to highlight the current plan against discrimination that is present in our state. The National Plan Against Gender-Based Violence from 2020 until 2022 for all gender and women-related concerns have already taken place and offer instruments and mechanisms to address those concerns. Of course, it's an ongoing reevaluation and a monitoring will be needed throughout the process. Additionally, Argentina is willing to tackle concerns and that are related to climate change, and that would include reevaluating the current circumstances of deforestation. The Argentine Republic also has a national plan in this regard, the National Plan on Forest and Climate Change. Nevertheless, the Argentine Republic is looking forward to the further process of working together and creating further strategies to working together and to develop our national plans and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to especially thank the delegation of Argentina for the presentation of their national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of the assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika members for Argentina, the representatives of Pakistan. The recommendation section will be adopted today at 11:45. The full report, including the addendum, will be circulated on Moodle tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. We will proceed with the review of India. Once the representative of India is ready, please raise your hand. Thank you. Thank you. As I said, we will now proceed with the review of India. I now give the floor to Her Excellency, Mrs. Balabayova, Attorney General of the Republic of India. I recall that the delegation of India has a maximum of 15 minutes to present their national report. Mrs. Balabayova, I have the floor now.
Thank you, dear Madam President, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's an outstanding honor and privilege for me, Aisil Balabayeva, Attorney General of the Republic of India, to have a chance to emphasize our nation's position, proposals, and of course our national report in Universal Periodic Review of Human Rights with all the distinguished members. We would like to appreciate the initiative taken by delegations for paying particular attention in implementing the urgent temporary measures in these conditions, especially to those engaging in or providing support for acts that undermine the rights of sensitive groups. We are deeply concerned about the ongoing violations of human rights around the globe, expressing our concerns in the national report of the rights of life, liberty and security of a person, fundamental freedoms, and participation of an individual in public, economic, and political life. Recalling not only Universal Declaration of Human Rights adopted by the United Nations in 1948, but also the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights adopted by the General Assembly in 1966, both containing the human rights in Article 19 with several other references to the Delegation of India, underlines the necessity of liberties of individuals. Furthermore, referring to the principles and objectives of National Human Rights Commission India and the resolutions adopted by the various sessions of United Nations Human Rights Council conferences, as well as relevant international covenants, declarations, and conventions, in particular those which call for respect of civil, economic, and social human rights. In terms of what has done throughout the last decades, it is predominantly crucial to point out that India has majorly demonstrated continuous efforts in the implementation of sustainable development strategies for the year 2030. The government in India is committed to continuing its efforts concerning environmental policies, remaining alert to the problem of global warming. Without our contribution and belief in an ethical and people-centric approach to the climate change, an emission to intensity reduction of 21% has been achieved over a decade. And the mentioned topic of environmental protection, new goals have been set as well. Based on the positive steps taken in Right to Life, recent UPR 3rd, the Law Commission of India agreed to the abolishing of the death penalty for all crimes except terror and waging war. In our national report, the delegates can find some positive amendments in their particular topic, including access to justice, arbitrary arrests, and so on. As regards the rights of economic security over the last 2 decades, domestic workers in India have gained visibility and their movements. In the international labor conferences, the ILO started the process of consulting with member states, including India, concerning all the topics about regulating working conditions and providing social security benefits to unorganized workers. Madam President, in our national report, we also intended to emphasize the economic empowerment of women by stating multiple studies that found a higher risk of forced and bonded women and child labor. Although more than 70% of agricultural operations are carried out by women, unfortunately, they are not recognized as official workers. Giving all these statistics in our national report, we also try to bring out initiations for demolishing such negative tendency. The government has also been taking proactive measures to eliminate the practice of child marriage. In 2006, the Prohibition of the Child Marriage Act was adopted and was regularly requested to monitor the effective implementation. To educate people about the issue, awareness has been created through the press and electronic media. Now, with your excellencies, we, as a delegation of India, would like to answer some questions that concern some other representatives of different countries. Well, when it comes to the question about the incomplete implementation of the UN Convention Against Torture, we would like to respond that considering this torture, India remains committed to ratifying the convention. The GOI is acting towards its ratification and has demanded the Law Commission of India review the Indian Penal Code and precisely the Code of Criminal Procedures and Indian Evidence Act. This will enable the GOI to ratify the convenience. Torture is already extensively punished under Indian law, example section 222 and 231 of the Penal Code prohibiting causing grievous hurt and etc. The Supreme Court has additionally, through its various judgments, held that torture is an affront to human dignity and violates the right to life under Article 21. The GOI underlines the following. India is a dualist country, and as reflected by Article 253 of the Constitution, this principle mandates the Parliament to enact domestic anti-torture legislation, especially when a treaty obligation entails alteration of the existing domestic law. The legislative action should be complemented before the referred ratification or accession. As underlined by the Supreme Court, international conventional law must be transferred into municipal law before the international treaty can become an internal law. The next concern was related to the protection of all persons from enforced disappearance. Concerning enforced disappearance, the latter is not codified as a criminal offense in Indian domestic law, nor exists as a separate enactment in this regard. Under Indian legislation framework, with the written of habeas corpus is the only accessible to vindicate those who have been forcibly disappeared. However, in 2018, has witnessed attempts by members of Lok Sabha to approve a statute to fulfill India's ratification of the ICPPEID. These have been pending and have not reached enough consensus. As a final part of these concerns, the Delegate of India is eager to state the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on human rights protection. The COVID-19 pandemic is something we are still struggling with, and the government of India would like to acknowledge that the people of India followed the governmental prescribed rules and were acknowledgeable about the drastic impact of COVID-19. Hence, also tried to abide the regulations during our first lockdown. Since the beginning of vaccination phase, we have administered 1.15 billion doses overall. Many states have adopted door-to-door vaccination to avoid super spread and to assist in the nation's mass vaccination efforts. Madam President and dear honorable delegates, let me take the opportunity to thank all of you for your interest in India's review process. The government of India is grateful for all of your presence in the ongoing meeting, appreciates your tremendous contribution, and calls all of you to negotiations about anything you would like to suggest to our national report. Our delegation will return with ideas and will have been generated by the end of this meeting. We look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now we will start with the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will again be 1 minute and 30 seconds for each reviewing state. Please be reminded that the use of the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for your remarks to be included in the working group report. Our list of speakers again follows the alphabetical order, and I start by giving the floor to the delegation of Argentina. Ms. Lötsch, you now have the floor.
Good morning. Distinguished Madam President, fellow delegates. The delegation of Argentina welcomes the State of India and its representatives and thanks it for the presentation of its fourth national report. The delegation of Argentina appreciates the measures taken by the State of India regarding atrocities against members of scheduled castes and tribes, women empowerment, as well as the efforts undertaken by the State of India concerning the rights of all children, as was presented in the national report. Starting, the delegation of Argentina would like to ask India about its intentions to sign and ratify the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, entering in the strive for complete international nuclear disarmament. Further, the delegation of Argentina would like to recommend the following. First, apart from the efforts taken by the Indian government to prevent violence against women, the State of Argentina recommends to create more safe spaces for women and to sensitize men on gender-related issues, to abrogate destructive practices such as honor killings and selective abortions of female birth. Second, that the State of India takes all necessary measures to strengthen and implement the National Act on Prohibition of Child Marriage of 2006, especially focusing on the compliance of the official age needed by girls to be married. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the Delegation of Morocco.
Thank you, Madam President. The Kingdom of Morocco welcomes the delegation of India and thanks it for the presentation of its fourth national report. The Kingdom of Morocco commends India for its commitment to work towards the 2030 SDGs and for the initiatives taken to mitigate climate change. However, the delegation of Morocco is concerned with the current levels of air pollution and considers that action must be taken to improve air quality. The Kingdom of Morocco recommends India to continue its efforts to ratify The Kingdom of Morocco recommends India to introduce stricter laws and enforcement of regulations on air quality, and Morocco also recommends to continue its efforts to ratify the Convention Against Torture. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the Delegation of Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Pakistan welcomes the delegation of India and thanks them for the presentation of their national report. Pakistan appreciates the legislation enacted for protecting women in the workplace and recommends continuous efforts to ensure empowerment of women both in domestic work and outside the home work. Pakistan recommends India to take the legislative measures for banning child labor, especially in hazardous sectors, and for fighting bonded labor. Pakistan also recommends India to allow a fact-finding mission to investigate the issue of Indian-occupied Kashmir and to take the necessary measures to allow for freedom of religion in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The delegation of India may now comment. Your Excellency, Mrs. Balabayova, if you want to answer to the previous speakers or add any comments, you have the floor, and your speaking time is again 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you, dear Madam President, honorable delegates, and dear ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, the delegation of India would like to appreciate the active engagement of the representatives from Argentina, Morocco, and Pakistan. And we would like to appreciate your ongoing dialogues and the eager of yours to hear all of your concerns separately. So we are definitely open to any recommendations about the topics related with the child marriage, air pollution, inequality, empowerment of child and women. In this case, we are accepting all the recommendations received by the delegation of Argentina in the recommendation related with these safe spaces for women who encountered with the domestic violence. We are eager to hear any other positive comments and remedies for the solution of these problems. We, the representatives of India government, will precisely take all the recommendations into consideration and let you know our position in the due time. As mentioned in our opening remarks, the government of India remains committed to leaving no positive recommendation behind and ensuring that all policies and recommendations concerning the rights of underprivileged individuals, including children, women, and other individuals, will be added to our priorities. We are prepared to face the challenges that are there and negotiate through the constraints that may emerge. Thank you once again for your contribution.
Thank you to the delegation of India for your comments. We now continue with the list of speakers, and I ask the delegation of South Africa to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. South Africa welcomes the distinguished delegation of India to this UPR session and thanks them for the presentation of their comprehensive national report. South Africa commends India's continuous efforts in the implementation of sustainable development strategies for the year 2030 and welcomes the efforts taken in reducing corruption and increasing accountability, such as the Prevention of Corruption Amendment Act of 2018. In order to build on the progress today, South Africa recommends India, firstly, to ratify the Convention Against Torture, secondly, to continue the discussion regarding the abolition of death penalty, thirdly, to further pursue the goals of the National Clean Air Programme. We wish India a successful review during this session. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the delegation of the UK. Ms. Comoretto, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland welcomes the delegation of India and thanks it for the presentation of its national report. The UK delegation appreciates the efforts of India on the decision to abolish the death penalty in more cases. Nevertheless, we strongly believe that death penalty should be abolished for all crimes, including terrorism and war. The UK delegation is also worried about the recent implementation of the intermediary guidelines and the Digital Media Code of Ethics, which could impose state censorship as well as abuse of power by the authorities. The UK has concerns regarding the unlawful condition and exploitation of children. The UK therefore recommends, first, that India expedite the ratification of the United Nations Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, and its optional protocol. We therefore recommend the total elimination of the capital punishment in Indian law. Second, the Indian government to ensure fair access to the internet, adhering to international human rights standards. Finally, we also stress our recommendation for the government of India to ratify the 2014 ILO protocol to the First Labour Convention in order to stop child labor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To the Delegation of India, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks. Your Excellency, Ms. Balabayova, you have the floor now.
Thank you very much once again. Our appreciation and gratitude to those assisting member states involved participants, and also thank you for your particular contribution in interactive dialogues. So we would like to comment about some concerns of the delegates about the death penalty. Well, death penalty in India can be applied only in the rarest of rare cases where the crime committed shocks the consequences, conscience of the society. Important steps have been already taken to eliminate the death penalty. For instance, the Law Commission of India agreed that the rarest of rare cases do not provide a reasonable standard for sentence determination. The Commission proposed the abolition of the death penalty for all crimes except terror, as it's mentioned in our national report. However, the validity of death penalty has been affirmed by the Supreme Court, sentencing that death penalty can still be applied after a fair trial, evaluation of the circumstances. And those who violated already Article 21. The courts retrace the mechanisms to prevent judicial efforts. I would like to thank you all of your attention in this precarious event, and we like to mention how proud we are to be a part of this interactive dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you to the Delegation of India for your final remarks. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to especially thank the Delegation of India for the presentation of their national report and their engagement in the interactive dialogue. The report of the review will be prepared by the members of the assigned Troika. And according to this year's procedure, the Troika members for India are the representatives of South Africa. The recommendation section will be adopted today at 12:05, and the full report, including the addendum, will be circulated on Moodle tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. We will now proceed with the review of Morocco. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Ella Petousis, Minister of Human Rights for the Kingdom of Morocco. I should recall that the Delegation of Morocco has a maximum of 15 minutes to present their national report. Your Excellency, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. In the name of God, prayers and peace be upon this assembly. Madam President, members of the working group, Your Excellencies, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as its Minister of Human Rights, I greet you on behalf of the Kingdom of Morocco and present to you its compliments for this, the fourth cycle of the Universal Periodic Review. The Kingdom of Morocco would like to confirm its readiness to pursue close collaboration with the Human Rights Council and to fully engage with the recommendations put forward in this UPR process. We would like to extend our thanks to the countries, NGOs, and NHRIs who have put forward preliminary questions and concerns about the state of affairs in Morocco, for which we are keen to provide answers. Firstly, fellow delegates, the Kingdom of Morocco would like to present to you a summary of its national report, which offers a comprehensive overview of the efforts, achievements, and challenges of the government and national human rights institutes regarding their commitments to promoting and protecting the human rights agenda. The UPR recommendations are used by our government as a basis for discussion and elaboration of a new national development model in collaboration with the Conseil National des Droits de l'Homme, or the CNDH. Shortly after the previous cycle of the UPR, Morocco formed its National Action Plan for the years 2017 to 2021, which included 435 measures aimed at guaranteeing rights and equality before the law. The Kingdom of Morocco follows its goal of a reform of the justice system in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution and international standards through the Judicial Reform Charter that aims to strengthen ethical standards and independence of the courts, separation of powers, and protections of freedoms and rights. The Moroccan government made efforts to reinforce freedom of expression, opinion, and the media, notably through its enactment of the Right to Information Law and its signing of the Partnership Agreement 2018 to 2021 with the Council of Europe. These measures were made with the objective of strengthening legal and institutional frameworks related to media pluralism, promoting quality journalism and ethical standards through self-regulatory bodies such as the National Press Council. Morocco continues to work to provide respect for the Constitution with regards to freedom of expression, opinion, assembly, and association, including for people wishing to express opinion on the political situation in the Western Sahara. On the issues of torture and deprivation of liberty, the Moroccan government has put in place several measures to prevent unjust treatment. In 2017, Parliament voted into legislation to give the CNDH the mandate of the National Preventative Mechanism, coming into force in 2018 to give the Council enhanced authority over issues relating to torture, detention, and training of prison wardens on human rights. The government also authorized NGOs providing social, educational, or religious services to prisoners to enter prison facilities and implement their work, and an average of 200 monitoring visits per year were conducted. Efforts to reduce prison overcrowding were made by the opening of new detention facilities. The Kingdom of Morocco continues to observe the moratorium on the death penalty, in place since 1993, in the knowledge that the abolition of capital punishment is the subject of intense debate among various sectors of Moroccan society and the international community. In September 2018, the third phase of the National Initiative for Human Development was launched, intended to combat economic disparity and poverty through advancing human capital, improving infrastructure and basic services, job creation for youth, and implementation of a program of support for human and childhood development. For this phase, 18 billion dirhams have been allocated. Regarding infrastructure and development, 230 households have been supplied with potable water, 60,000 with electricity, and 8,200 kilometers of road have been built. Over 1,900 centers have been built for women in difficult situations, the elderly, and those with special needs, and 2,500 centers for sports, culture, and education have also been constructed. Lastly, to improve economic inclusion, 9,400 income-generating activities have taken place, with 64% of those being in rural areas. It is worth noting that before the COVID-19 pandemic, poverty had fallen from 3.1% to 2.3% in 2019, however, has since risen again to 3.6% in 2021. Poverty is a problem the government is in the process of improving through addressing unemployment and increasing social support. In line with the International Labour Convention, number 131, minimum wage and family compensation have gradually increased. In 2017, the National Plan for Unemployment Advancement was launched, proving effective in 2019 when unemployment levels did begin to drop. As we're all aware, however, the current pandemic has taken its toll on our societies and most definitely our economies, resulting in unemployment reaching a high 12.8% this year. To address the COVID-19 pandemic, various effective measures were put in place in accordance with the standards of the World Health Organization. Currently, Morocco stands as Africa's most vaccinated country, with 61.2% of its eligible population being fully vaccinated. In terms of citizens' right to health, the government can confirm that 62% of the population is covered by a basic health coverage system, inclusive of vulnerable groups and migrants, thanks to the launch of the medical assistance system in 2018. Some other notable improvements include the strengthening of the right to education through the Strategic Vision for Reform 2015 to 2030, introduction of distance learning throughout the pandemic, the training of 200,000 new teachers nationwide, and combating illiteracy, particularly amongst women and girls in rural areas. The Kingdom of Morocco continues to strive to protect and enhance the rights of women, this being a matter of focus in light of the recommendations supported in the third cycle of the UPR. Consequently, 2018 saw the implementation of Law number 103.12 on combating violence against women, which criminalizes and increases the penalty for any physical or moral act of discrimination on the basis of sex. The National Committee for Caring for Women, Victims of Violence, was created to accommodate victims of gender-based violence. Achieving gender equality remains a key goal, with the gender-responsive budgeting as an act of national budget reform, as well as collaborations with the European Union and United Nations Women. Within the Economic and Social Council, women's participation in economic, social, political, and cultural life was increased. The committee was set up with the purpose of identifying the independence of women and involving their participation in these sectors of Moroccan life. There is room for improvement, and hence gender equality continues to be a priority within the national development model. Another national priority is the rights of children, and under the integrated public policy for the protection of children, the government addressed child neglect, abuse, exploitation, and violence against children, as well as the provision of care. The Children's Right Covenant of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, first signed in 2005, was adopted in 2019, enshrining the fundamental rights of children in Islam. The Family Solidarity Fund was created to guarantee the rights of widowed mothers and protect children from homelessness through financial support. Since its establishment this year, the program has reached almost 115,000 widows and 195,000 orphans. To combat child labor, 2 million dirhams have been allocated to projects with this objective. Another vulnerable group to which the Moroccan government has placed emphasis are persons living with disabilities. Through a combination of policy, funding, and social programs, an interministerial committee on disability rights has sought to increase the participation of persons with disabilities in both the economy and society, to increase the inclusivity of the education sector, to improve transport accessibility, and strengthen disability rights throughout society. Additionally, Moroccan Sign Language was given a priority within the objectives of the National Council for Moroccan Languages and Culture. The government of Morocco has worked to improve the rights of migrants and refugees within its borders. The National Strategy for Immigration and Asylum, in collaboration with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, actioned programs relating to health, education, youth, employment, vocational training, housing, and humanitarian assistance to assist migrants in social and economic integration. In an effort to regularize the status of migrants in Morocco, the validity of residence cards was extended from 1 to 3 years. To combat trafficking of persons, the National Committee for the Coordination and Prevention of Human Trafficking was inaugurated in 2019, and in collaboration with police forces has resulted in the seizure of several perpetrators. Victims benefited from protective measures such as shelters and legal aid. In light of the COP26 Climate Summit, the Kingdom of Morocco has committed to combating climate change and is proud of its achievements in this sector. This year, the Kingdom ranked in the top 10 countries worldwide for the Climate Change Performance Index. Over 110 international and regional environmental conventions have been ratified in line with the country's SDGs. The National Strategy for Sustainable Development is a plan of action that recognizes the inherent connection between human welfare, the economy, and the environment, and aims to embrace all of these elements in its legal and institutional frameworks. Morocco has achieved significant milestones in terms of its transition to renewable energy sources and is home to the world's largest solar power plant project. Action has also been taken to improve air quality and rapidly increase the number of wastewater treatment stations across the country. The right to a healthy environment remains to be a national imperative. Now I will turn to address the questions that were presented by the delegate of the United Kingdom to the delegate of Morocco. With regards to the ratification of the optional protocols, the cooperation with international treaties is important for the Kingdom of Morocco, in line with its commitment to protect and promote human rights. The optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of the Child has been signed, and accession to this treaty is in progress. In addition, the optional protocol to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women has been approved by Parliament and is in the process of being signed. It is also worth noting that there are ongoing discussions regarding ratifying further optional protocols in line with the constant judicial reform and the National Action Plan for Democracy and Human Rights. In terms of the question regarding the Western Sahara, Morocco has made efforts to improve the enjoyment of human rights in the Moroccan Sahara, in particular, the new model for the development of the southern provinces, the advanced regularization and efficient role played by the National Human Rights Institution. The CNDH, through its regional commissions in Laoun and Dakhla, has undertaken efforts for the development, protection, and promotion of the Saharo-Hassani heritage, which is enshrined in the 2011 Constitution as an inherent component of Moroccan identity. Pending a final and consensual political solution among all parties to the territorial dispute over the Moroccan Sahara, the Kingdom of Morocco continues its efforts in a participatory and integrated approach to promote rights and freedoms of all peoples in the Moroccan Sahara. Morocco draws no distinction between the Sahara regions and its other regions. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you sincerely for your attention, and we look forward to a fruitful and interactive dialogue. Thank you.
Your Excellency, thank you for your presentation. We will now start with the interactive dialogue. Before I give the floor to the delegations for recommendations, questions, and comments, I would like to remind you that the speaking time will again be 1 minute and 30 seconds, and that if the word recommend or recommendation is necessary for your remarks to be included in the working group report. Our list of speakers follows the alphabetical order, and I start by giving the floor to the Delegation of Argentina. You now have the floor.
Thank you. Distinguished Madam President, fellow delegates, the Delegation of Argentina welcomes the Kingdom of Morocco and its representatives and thanks it for the presentation of its 4th national report. The State of Argentina appreciates the efforts taken by the Kingdom of Morocco for promoting gender equality and the strengthened protection of children. The following recommendations are made by the Delegation of Argentina to the Kingdom of Morocco. First, the amendment of the Moroccan Penal Code in 2 urgent instances, namely the abolition of Articles 489, 490, and 491, which criminalize and denounce lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex persons. And secondly, the introduction of the criminalization of material rape. Secondly, the Delegation of Argentina recommends the legitimization of sexual relations outside of marriage and the abolishment of any legal provisions creating differences between children born within or outside marriage. Additionally, Argentina recommends to impose legal regulations that hold accountable the fathers of children born outside of marriage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the Delegation of Pakistan. Ms. Batistine, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President, fellow delegates, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan wishes to thank the Kingdom of Morocco for the exhaustive national report. Pakistan deems positively the development in achieving gender equality and women's rights and the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The Islamic Republic of Pakistan is concerned about the high level of poverty within the territory of the Kingdom of Morocco. Therefore, Pakistan wishes to recommend to continue implementing them and enforcing programs to reduce and eventually eradicate poverty in line with SDG number 6. Our country is also deeply worried about the living condition of prisoners within detention facilities. As a consequence, Pakistan further recommends to continue working on the improvement of the condition of prisoners in detention facilities and reduce overcrowding. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The Delegation of Morocco may now comment. Your Excellency, if you want to answer to the previous speakers or add any comments, you now have the floor and your speaking time is 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to the first two fellow member states for their insightful interventions thus far. I would like to confirm on the topics of gender equality and women's rights that this remains to be a national priority in terms of our national action plan going forward. As mentioned in the overview of our national report, there have been several policy measures put in place to improve the involvement of women in society and the economy. And not only this, in addition, also practical measures put in place to support women in difficult situations. So just to confirm that this is an issue we are in constant dialogue with our National Human Rights Council. Secondly, on the issue of prison overcrowding and prison conditions, as I did mention in our national report, this is an issue that we have begun to tackle by introducing further prison detention facilities to reduce overcrowding. And on the topic of poverty and inequality, once again, it is an issue that we have been battling with in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is something that we are working hard to improve. Thank you for your concerns, and they will be taken forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your comments. We will now continue with the list of speakers. The Delegation of South Africa, you have the floor. Ms. Anita Islam.
Thank you, Madam President. South Africa welcomes the Delegation of Morocco to this UPR session and thanks the delegation for the presentation of its national report. South Africa has taken note of the efforts made by the Kingdom of Morocco in the fight against the ongoing pandemic. However, South Africa is concerned about freedom of expression in the Kingdom of Morocco as the Penal Code still imposes prison sentences for non-violent speech offenses. Non-violent criticism of state officials and the country's policies is protected under the ICCPR, which Morocco has ratified in 1979. South Africa therefore recommends the Kingdom of Morocco to adopt the Penal Code in accordance with the ICCPR. As previously recommended in the last cycle, South Africa recommends the Kingdom of Morocco to continue the national debate on the abolition of death penalty and to sign the second optional protocol to the ICCPR aimed at the abolition of death penalty. Also adopt a comprehensive anti-discriminatory law. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor to the Delegation of the United Kingdom. You have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. The United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland welcomes the Kingdom of Morocco and thanks it for the presentation of its comprehensive national report. The United Kingdom takes positive note of Morocco's commitment to support the freedom of expression. We recognize its efforts to avoid overcrowding situations in detention centers, and we support the steps taken to implement the recommendations of the third cycle of the UPR regarding violence against women. However, we would like to express our concerns about the lack of justiciability of the right of freedom of expression, to ask whether Morocco has considered measures other than the opening of new detention centers, and to respect the international standards. The UK recommends, first, to take all appropriate measures to guarantee freedom of expression of journalists, social media activists, and content creators. Second, to consider changing the law on pre-trial detention and consider alternative forms of confinement. Third, to fulfill the international standards ratifying the optional protocol to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To the Delegation of Morocco, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to the previous comments and to make your final remarks.
I'm sorry, you skipped us. You skipped the India. You didn't give us to make your comments.
Dear delegate, first of all, we would like to remind you that you have to raise an issue to the Secretariat before taking the floor, because you were not instructed to take the floor. And second, your delegation did not hand in any recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Dear Delegation of India, do you have a recommendation that you would like to put forward now?
We will be happy to recommend now. If you
Then we will make an exception here, and you will now be given the floor to make your recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam President. The nation of India welcomes the delegation of Morocco and thanks it for the presentation of its national report. The nation of India would like to congratulate the Kingdom of Morocco on their efforts to strengthen individuals' freedom of expression. However, the nation of India is concerned that Sahrawi children are exposed to violence in direct and indirect forms. The nation of India would like to ask government of Morocco what measures will be taken to prevent violence and discrimination in school, along with the day and night raids into Sahrawi houses that are frequent without a legal documents or warrants. India recommends that Morocco to take all necessary measures to provide Sahrawi students with an adequate and safe educational environment, including preventing and avoiding all discriminatory practices, guaranteeing an educational program that respects the child's cultural heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. To the Delegation of Morocco, you now have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond to these comments and to make your final remarks. Your Excellency, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam President. Once again, we would like to thank the last three fellow member states for their insightful interventions. Firstly, to note that the Kingdom of Morocco values the freedom of expression and opinion. However, we are aware that this topic is widely discussed in the international community as well as within our own borders. We are in conversation with Morocco's National Press Council and have begun programs to further the training of public officials, law enforcement, and journalists to protect and promote quality journalism and freedom of expression throughout Morocco. On the comment of the death penalty, once again, it's important to note that we continue to observe the moratorium on the death penalty in place since 1993. And on the issue of prison overcrowding, I have made comment in terms of the introduction of new detention facilities, but in addition, the training of prison wardens to improve the quality of life inside detention facilities is an ongoing project. On the issue regarding the Morocco Sahara, efforts have been made to improve the enjoyment of human rights in this region. The delegation can confirm that all Moroccan citizens are born equal before the law in terms of rights and responsibilities. And the people of the Moroccan and Western Sahara are an integral component of the territorial integrity of Morocco.
Your Excellency, please excuse the interruption. The timer has not been shown, but your time has run out now. Thank you for your final remarks. And I would like to especially thank your delegation for the presentation of the national report and your engagement in interactive dialogue. The report will be prepared by the members of the assigned Troika. According to this year's procedure, the Troika members for Morocco are the representatives of the United Kingdom. The recommendations will be adopted today at 12:30, and the full report, including the addendum, will be circulated tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. We will now proceed to the drafting of the working group reports of the states reviewed in these morning sessions. In order to avoid any technical issues, all the delegates of the state under review until this point, respective troikas, shall move into the respective breakout rooms. The final version of the working group report shall be uploaded by the Troika on Moodle until 1 p.m. The adoption of the recommendation section of the working group reports will begin at 11:40. We kindly ask you to avoid delays. Thank you.